Friday, Friday, you say? Man, I would say thank goodness it's Friday, but that just means we're in a weekend full of work ahead, right? Hey, well, good Friday, everybody. Happy Friday, happy Pi Day. It is Dave Rush, Senior Instructors at Total Seminars, and we're here to get together for another Pi Day Friday, where we'll spend the next couple of hours from 2 o'clock Central Time to about 4 o'clock Central Time, give or take, talking about the Raspberry Pi and its use in our continued studies toward CompTIA certifications and technology in general, as many of us are still locked down in these pandemic conditions. So hope you're doing well this week and looking forward to a good weekend. I am here kind of sort of as always with my partner in Pi, Scott Jernigan. As many of you know, he is deep in the weeds writing with Mike Myers, the next generation 1008 book, N10-008 Network Plus book. And he got hit with a setback the other day. Everything was all set and cool with this particular piece of information. And then somebody stepped up and said, that doesn't work. And suddenly he went from ahead of the game to, oh my gosh, I got a bunch of rewriting to make it meet this criteria. So he is working the background, but only in a very limited fashion. We talked briefly before the show. He has volume off. So if I say, hey, Scott, come online, he won't hear. And likewise, he's only paying half attention to the YouTube stream. You're welcome to send messages to him at Scott Jernigan. I don't think he's poked in yet, so you may not be able to reach him, but give it a try. And he may or may not catch it. The only way he's talking about paying attention to anything right now is if I send him a message on the back channel, that will ping his machine. He's left that much audio on. Sip time. So for the most part, it's you and me, just the two of us. And so we have a wonderful one-on-one opportunity for you to ask me questions. And again, if you have something specific for Scott, and he hasn't responded and it's critical, I'll send him a back channel message to ask him to check the feed. But by and large, he is very, very, very intensely focused on completing a particular piece of chapter or content before the Friday meeting that he and Mike have every Friday with our publisher. So enjoy each other's company, enjoy my company, and we'll drag Scott into it if and when we can. Scrolling up my notes here, since I'm totally alone, I can't even see Scott reading your messages and saying, hey, you skipped something. Okay, so quickie intros. I do these intros not because of the folks who are here right now at this instant. You guys are all regulars. In general, you know what's going on here. But this is for the folks who watch this stuff on archive later. There's a couple hundred people through the course of the week who watch these archives. And I didn't have a plan for today. I mentioned last week that we are just up to our elbows in alligators in projects. Scott and Mike doing the book and everybody else doing other things. And there's a project that I am generally responsible for, and that's prepping kits that we provide to educational institutions. It's a big, big job. And I actually hired my son for 3 days so we could get a lot caught up. And I was still working 16 hours a day for those 3 days. And that kind of time effort, plus the drive time to the office, hour and a half each way, give or take, depending on how early or late I do, that just kills the day. And there is no time to prep for a show. So I didn't do any show prep until late last night. I was able to stay home and I said, well, I'll do a little bit of work. And this morning I did a little bit of work and actually drummed up a bit of a presentation. So up until a couple hours ago, the banner that we had up for the upcoming show was just a generic Dave Rush talks Raspberry Pi and all things therein. But I changed that banner just a couple hours ago to say we're going to talk a little bit about cameras. As you may know, I had a camera presentation scheduled. Oh, this will be tricky. There we go. We got it. A couple of weeks ago, and it got dropped off because of this project. And so I had some work done in advance on that. I was able to leverage some of that, and we'll do some today. Oh, let's see what's up here. We do AMAs 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Mike Myers does the great Mike Myers AMA shows on Monday, Wednesday, 2 o'clock Central Time, and on Friday. He's donated, or very kindly offered to let me use this time to talk with you about Raspis and CompTIA and all things technical and all things out and out, as long as it's not religion or politics. We're pretty flexible on that. If it goes deeper or more time consuming than we have, I'll take notes and either answer you next time or pass those notes on to Mike for an answer. Or it is an AMA. Ask me questions. You can use the live chat on YouTube on the right hand side of your screen. Remember to set it to live chat instead of top chat. Are you kidding? Not a chance. Somebody's back channeling me on something unrelated to this. I don't distract from the show when I'm doing this. So anyways, ask me questions on the live YouTube chat thing. And if that's not possible, you're watching on the archive, you've got something longer than would fit on the YouTube chat. You have, you're too shy. You just don't want to talk to us live online. That's okay. You don't have to. There are a million other ways to get in touch with us. And here's a couple of them. You can send me an email at my work address, daver@totalsem.com, or my personal address, drushtx@yahoo.com. They're cross-linked, so don't send them to both. They'll just send each other messages over and over and over until the universe compresses into one microscopic little black hole. And likewise, if you send a message here to Scott and he can't respond, send him an email. He will get to that sooner or later. He's scottj@totalsem.com. You can find us both on stream on occasion. Blood Rush TX is me. Scarheart is he. And I don't have it on this slide, but you can also access Mike Myers in person. If you want to talk to him about one of the courses he's written, a question that you have, something like that, you can do that. He's Michael M@totalsem.com, and he steams as Senor Pepe, SENOR space PEPE. You can also find me on, I didn't put it on this page, on LinkedIn. And I'm looking to expand my my links. So by all means, look up David Rush or Dave Rush on LinkedIn. You'll find me by my Total Seminars reference. And I'd love to get your invite, and I will certainly say yes. All right, stand by. I gotta see what this back channel nonsense is. Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's more of my big project here. Checking the questions when who gets a question. Sorry about that. Company business calls. All right, back to notes and intros. If there's anything else that we need to mention here. So we're using Raspberry Pis. We're going to use Raspberry Pi today for today's labs. And the cool thing about today's labs is you don't have to have a Raspberry Pi for this. You can do this with just about any Linux distro. You can even do it in a virtual machine. It's a little bit of effort because we're going to use USB cameras today. We're not going to use the Raspberry Pi cameras. And we'll be using a program called FS Webcam. And it works on Ubuntu and all the Debian distros, and I think the Arch distros. So there you go. I'll show you how to do that, show you how to install it. It comes native with Raspberry Pi OS. You don't have to install. Nope, I'm sorry, that's not true. It does not come native. There's another one comes native we're going to do in a week or so if everything goes well. Scrolling down through my notes. You don't need a Pi. Well, we don't need that. I don't have the PyR Square Zapto.org web server up and running today. I didn't do anything much worth doing an archive on it last week. We pretty much just took generic questions. So there was really nothing to add to. I will do one after today. There is some useful information here, and I've got notes and outlines that are interesting. Good Lord. No, I am not going to talk to you now. I just said I'm in the show. All right, that's enough of that intro nonsense. Let's see what's going on, who's here, who's not, and why you're not here if you're not. That was a good start beforehand. Tullowit got in first at quarter till we began. Hey, by the way, I'm using a different mic today. I just picked it up last weekend. It's a cheapie. It's just a little USB mic. Here, let me hold it up for you. You can see the garbage that it is. It's not a brand name or anything like that. It's a flea market find. I bought it because I wanted to try it on a Pi. And just for hoots, I thought, well, I'll try this for our in-house Zoom meetings. And it's okay. I'm told it's a little brighter than the usual mic that I use. And I think the reason for that is because my usual mic is a lav mic. So it's right there against my chest and you get a little more bass rumble out of that. I would stick this up against my chest, but that just seems a little weird, right? So if it's problematic, let me know. If it makes my voice sound horrible or squeaky or Donald Ducky, I can switch back. I won't switch back today, but I'll switch back to the next show if you deem it's warranted. Excuse me. Alan Duggan came in 149. Welcome, Alan. And Patricia Grace early for a show. Very nice afternoon. I'm typing that in a British accent, so hear it that way. Oh, so afternoon. Yes, that's exactly the way I read it. Thank you so much for sounding so much smarter than we're supposed to sound when we're speaking with our American accents, eh? Sort of a cross between English and Australian. Sorry about that. But hey, if you listen to him, I just heard myself doing that. That sounded like, oh, darn, I can't think of his name. Talk show host. Lived up in Canada. Never mind. It'll come to me. Tullowit says, hey. Jason Helm, what up? David Rush posts a musical reference that Tullowit didn't jump on, but did point out thank you. Sound is good. So thank you. Sunny and Mango, hi. Nice to see both of you. I never know which of you is behind the keyboard when it's Sunny and Mango, but it's Sunny and Mango in Philadelphia. David Mohan, what is BPDU guard? He dives right into it. Okay. Bridgeport data units, BPDU. Bridgeport data unit is the units that switches use to communicate with one another. When you have one switch online, we have no need for BPDUs. And when you bring another switch online, by default, switches have certain safety and security features enabled. For instance, rapid, man, sorry, I got a lot of sleep last night, and then suddenly, just before the show, I got a little micro dizzy spell, and my brain is totally fuzzed out. What the heck is the name of that protocol? It's the protocol that can detect if there's a loop in there. And so actually what happens even before that happens is when two bridge units, like a switch or even like routers, connect to one another, they start talking to each other. Oh, you're a bridge, I'm a bridge, switch, whatever. And they say, one of us should be in control of the two of us, and maybe there will be more bridges as we go. So they start communicating with messages that are just intended for each other. Those are called Bridgeport data units, BPDUs. And they're going to hold an election with their first set of BPDUs. And what they do, interestingly, is they compare basically the date of manufacture. They do it in a little convoluted way. But whoever was manufactured, the most recently, he gets to be the foreman of all the switches in the game, everybody that's interconnected. And they select him because, on theory, if he was manufactured newest, then he's got the newest, bestest features, right? And then whoever the boss is, he starts a communication with any and all of the switches and says, who can talk to who and how can you talk to? And again, this is using Bridgeport data units. And if everything's working great, cool bananas. But if not, the foreman, the boss, there's an official name, and I'm brain farting on that one again too. Sorry about that. He makes a map. It makes a map of all of the ports and all the interconnections, and he looks for any loop conditions. And if he encounters one, he sends messages to one or both of the switches that are involved in a loop configuration and disables those ports. So even though they're wired up as a loop, if the port is disabled, it doesn't matter. Okay, so these are some of the things that BPDUs can do. Now, what if you're a bad guy and you want to just wreak havoc on the switches? I want to turn off all of these switches. I want to enable this switch to be a repeater port, have a repeater port in it. Well, that's what BPDU guard and other things is going to prevent. By setting up BPDU guards, then we're going to detect invalid BPDUs or invalid sources of BPDUs and so forth, and make sure that a malicious actor is not trying to take down our switch infrastructure. Hope that helps. David, are you in one of the Udemy courses? I know that I've seen your name in the past in AMAs. I'm wondering if I've seen your name recently posting a question or so on Udemy. Just let me know, no big deal one way or the other. Hey, Scott Jernigan has checked in at 2:02. So by virtue of the fact that he's checked in, you can send messages to him. We've kind of discovered that if you don't check in, we don't know you're there, and YouTube won't allow us to send @ or pound messages to anybody. Okay. Andrew Hutz, and I've been following lots of your good news and plans on the Discord channel. You're a week away from Sec Plus and getting better and better on your practice test. Congratulations. There you go. The very next line. Look at that. You were right there with me. Taking Sec Plus this coming Thursday. Jason Helms at Dave. I think you have to say at whoever I am, David Rush. But okay. So if a resolution, oh, I saw you post this on Discord. I was going to leave that go for someone else to answer, because I answered way too many questions on there. Got to give other people a chance, right? But that's posted here. So if a resolution is too low, the text in PIC will appear big. And if it's too high, it'll appear small. Is that right? Yes, he says with some hesitation, because it depends on how the system sets up their resolution handlers. Some of them, in addition to changing the resolution, that will potentially off-scale some of the content out of the screen. I have, for instance, a screen on a Raspberry Pi that's sitting on top of my desk, and I don't know what its resolution is. I think probably 1280 by 720. And it's interesting, the desktop all fits on there. Wonderful. But certain applications don't seem to follow that rule, and they scroll down below the borders of the bottom edge. And it's interesting because I can't, in many cases, even get there. I have to do some heavy magic and basically hook it up to a real monitor and get full resolution and make changes to those particular utilities. I try, therefore, not to use those utilities. But in general, if we're talking about Windows, yeah, it's just going to scale the text and the images to a point that they can become unreadable. Like if you really take a screen that's supposed to be HD, 1920 by 1080, and you set the resolution to 640 by 480, it's going to look so pixelated and so huge, and the text is just bottom line. But yeah, in general, you're taking that correctly. What I was going to post on the Discord channel, and I'll post the information for the Discord channel in a few minutes for everybody to join us on these kinds of discussions, is you have nothing to lose by giving that a try and checking and seeing what the effect is on the given machine that you're working on. If it's unreadable and unusable and you can't get to menus, then you can't okay the change, and in either 10 or 15 seconds, the change will revert back to the settings that you had previously. And if you set it too high, there is such a point, and used to be you could set it higher than your monitor would allow, but if monitors talk with video cards right now, and they set maximum and minimums and select values in between, so it's hard to set it too low. But if you set it particularly high or particularly low. Oh, that happened to me one time. We were testing one time in a new facility. We're a mobile testing center for Pearson VUE, and we were short on machines. So a couple of days before the class started, we purchased a couple. We couldn't get the same make and model that we had, but these were really, really close. And then came the big day, and we set up testing stations on these things, or laptops. And it turned out the two machines that we bought were 4K, and instead of the usual 1920 HDs. And so when they came up in that, the text was so small, it was effectively unreadable. And it turned out when we tried to run the testing software on there, it gagged, and we had to change everything back to 1080. All right, that was 204. 204 again, Jason Helms, Dave. Oh, that was you. 205, Scott. Good luck, Andrew Hutz, says Scott to Andrew. Anyone know Mike's email? Yes, Rocky. Mike's email is Michael M, Michael M at totalsem.com. I'm going to post it here on the chat feed right now at 21 minutes past 2 o'clock my time. So Mike Myers email MICHAELM at totalsem.com. Okay, so you can get it off of there. Reading messages. Jason Helms talking to Andrew. Andrew talking back. Getting in the 80s. That's the minimum target. We think if you're getting in the mid 80s on our practice test and you're doing it not having memorized them, then you have every expectation to do well. Unless there's some underlying condition, you get testitis or something like that. I know that's not Andrew's issue. He is not a testitis kind of guy. But if you're getting in the 80s and you don't do it because you have the questions memorized, but because you answer why the right answer is right, and you can explain why the wrong answers are wrong, then you're getting good, solid knowledge on it. It's going to super scroll. I feel it. Dave, JBS paid 11 million in, let's add the rest of the word here, in Bitcoin to resolve a ransomware attack. What's your take on companies doing this? Do you think it will attract more attacks if people start paying? So that's kind of beyond my technical area of expertise. I claim no expertise in corporate business, and is paying ransom the right thing to do or not? This case, it's not like the criticality of the oil infrastructure. JBS is a very large meat producer of all kinds of meat products, and primarily beef. And so if they didn't, there would be a beef shortage, but there's plenty of other food opportunities out there. And I'm just doing pros and cons here. I'm not saying they did the right thing or the wrong thing. So I don't know. I was very surprised that they read that they did. And my guess is they were working with federal authorities in the same way that the pipeline company was, and they will hopefully get some of that back. But here's my take on it. Somebody appears to not be doing a good job of planning for these kinds of crises. Hopefully, in an ideal world, they could have spent less than $11 million on an effective backup solution that had them back up and running in 24 hours. Cold site, warm site, hot site, good backups, whatever it is. Hopefully that costs less than 11 million bucks. So that's my take on it. An ounce of prevention, right? Patricia Grace, trying to connect to Wi-Fi on my netbook, Linux OS. Why does it show stronger signal from my neighbor's SSID? I'm in the same room as my gateway AP. So the answer to that is, I don't know, because what we don't know is the difference between your card in this machine and your card in another machine. So there's driver issues. There are specific Wi-Fi chips, important makes and models that show up differently. Maybe your neighbor, and you know what? I'm thinking about this, and I am now betting that this is the answer. If you buy an off-the-rack, stand by, I got some in here. Here's one. Kind of a wreck I can make as I pull this stuff out of here. Okay, here's an oldie moldy. Hopefully we all recognize this. You had this, you've used one of these at some time in your world, whether you physically put your hands on it and set it up and configured it, or you've connected it to, but this is the classic Linksys WRT54G 802.11G model Soho wireless router. And the default power output on this thing is 30 milliwatts. Now you can have, by the rules of the FCC in the United States, on the ISM band 2.4 gigahertz, a maximum power output on 2.4 gigahertz of 100 milliwatts. But again, this thing comes with 30. So what you would do back in the day is you would flash the firmware in here, get rid of the Linksys firmware, and replace it with DDWRT. I'm sorry about that. You probably lost my voice as I turned around, but there you go. And with DDWRT, one of the settings that you could change was the power output, and you could crank it all the way up to 1100 milliwatts. Today, there's a lot of firmware that has kind of built-in elements from those DDWRTs, and it has adjustable power. And my guess, my 80% guess is they're technical, they've gone in there, and without any good reason, other than if more is better, too much is just right, they've changed the output to 100, or maybe, this is some off the wall that automatically comes with a higher output than the one that you're physically close. By the way, if you're too close to your WAP, your system will attenuate signals. Okay, I super scold. We knew that was coming. Moving along, 206. We just did that. Halo. We're not playing Halo today. Hello, Elbow. Jason Holmes talking to Andrew. So if I see an app there and it doesn't say Dave R or Total Seminars, I'm assuming you're talking to each other, and I'm moving on. I'm going to crank on here for about an hour worth of questions and content and things like that. And then give or take the hour, we're going to do USB webcams. And that doesn't take very long, half hour, 25 minutes, something like that. And then we'll finish it up with questions, just like we did the other day. Ardeen or Ardian or Ardeen at 209. I have an empty tower and power supply sitting in the closet. What can I build with it? If I get extra parts to help me with my overall IT knowledge, I already have a working gaming PC. What can you build with it? You can build another PC, which is a really useful thing, whether you're working on A+, Net+, or Security+, because with that, and either motherboard based built on Wi-Fi, or a Wi-Fi card, or a Wi-Fi dongle, or spend $20. You can even get them cheaper on the used market. In fact, I just dropped one here. I got this for $5 at a flea market. It's 100 megabits. It's not a gigabit. But it was $5, and it came with a power supply. And that's all I need to do networking experiments, right? So, if I'm going to do production, I want a gigabit switch. But if I just need to do networking, if I want to make a web server on this computer and access it from this computer, or a file server, or a Samba server, or capture some traffic with Wireshark, or just build a simple, basic cruddy old computer, 4 gigs of RAM and enough CPU horsepower to run Windows 10, cool. Or you're studying A+. A+ calls for knowing some Linux stuff. Now, I'm thinking the way to go to learn Linux is, Raspberry Pi OS on a Raspberry Pi for $35 or $50 by the time you bought a power supply and a case and a micro SD card. You can do everything else headless. But if not, if you got a case and a power supply sitting around, you get a cheap old motherboard at a flea market or Goodwill or wherever, and some RAM, CPU, and you're in the same business. You've already got a keyboard. You may need another keyboard and mouse to do all this. But build a second machine, make a network out of it, and explore all of the networking things and different operating systems things that you can do without interrupting your gaming rig. Elbow wants to know how many watts is your power supply. Doesn't matter for my suggestion. You should be able to do this with a 250. And I don't think you can buy one smaller than that. In fact, these days it's pretty unlikely to find one under 400. That's probably not true. Man, that's good lemonade. 1500 watt. 1500 watt. That's sitting around in your closet. That's another gaming rig, dude. Man, that's a 4 GPU SLI editing rig. Goodness gracious. Follow up from Andrew at 213 to my previous. With Colonial Pipeline, SolarWinds, and JBS, hackers seem to be targeting critical infrastructure rather than just stealing data. Is that the new normal? I think is that normal? I don't know. That's 3 bigger names that have been in the news. Sony got nailed, 2 years ago, something like that. But does that make it the norm? No, I don't think so. There are probably many smaller organizations that are easier pickings. You go after one of these big ones like that, as we've seen with Colonial, they get the feds involved right away. They're already nailing people. So, smaller potatoes may be a little safer. But I don't know. Again, you're putting me in a role that I don't have expertise in. So I just don't know. Sorry about that. Discussionism official, nice to see you, mon ami, wishing you the best, bros. Likewise. Catch us on Discord afterward. I couldn't do Discord for the last couple of days because I was working at the office and I pulled myself away from the big task to work the back channels on the AMAs. And then the second they were done, I was back in the fray. But I'm at home today. They can't make me work on that project. So I got time to get on Discord. I was talking with Scott. He's going to try to get on Discord. If the publisher meeting doesn't go too long, the world holds its collective breath, and we shall see. Passing 213. Well, from what I heard, they got pretty much everything back except some of their files. Yeah. An honest thief. I'm going to blackmail you, but if you pay off, I'll actually deliver on the goods. Reading questions. Spanning tree protocol. Thank you very much. And then the replacement for spanning tree protocol is rapid STP. Thank you. Man, I'd already put it out of my mind. So you saved the day. You're my girl. STP. Yep. My other girl is sitting right beside me. I think I got a semi-dirty look. She knows you're married. It's okay. I know I'm married. Hi, gang, says Zach. Way to go, Zach. Good to see you here. Glad you're feeling back to getting in the fray. Saw you on briefly on the Wednesday show and now here, so that's great. Sure, make a NAS out of it. That's an SMB server. That's a great thing to do. Do it with Linux, then you can do other things too. Trying to keep afloat. Choco Taco, you are here. Choco Taco, pay attention. This is for you. We have been looking for you for 10 days. I haven't seen you on Steam. At least I didn't see you after it turned out I learned that we are looking for you. So you were part of Dan and Mike's shindig the other day, and we are trying to arrange payments, and we need to send you a form. So please, please contact Scott Jernigan. I'm going to put his stuff up. You may or may not have contacted him in the past, but I'm putting his contact information up right this very second. You need to send him a note so he can have your email address and he can send you this form, because Mike has money burning a hole in his pocket and he is desperate to give some of it to you. And we're coordinating everything through Scott. So catch him at scottj@totalsem.com. Just write him a note. If your email address doesn't look like Choco Taco, hey, this is Choco Taco. Heard you trying to get hold of me. Dave found me and said to contact you. So thank you very much. And if there's anybody else on here that has not been in contact with Mike or Scott, who participated in that event with Mike and Dan LaChance for Sec Plus, doing feed me question type things, please give Scott a contact, scottj@totalsem.com, and he will get you the paperwork. It's a release. We need to do a release. The legal eagles said we can, you know what legal eagles say. Goodbye. So that's what's shaking, Bacon. Contact him right away, immediately. Okay, hoping for good results on Sec Plus. Other than that, just working on my Java course. Cool. Scrolling past 2019, people saying hi to each other, Elbows talking, or Ardian's talking to Elbow. Andrew talks to Chaco. I see Chaco, I see Andrew, I see Zach. Passing 221, lots of people talking to each other. There's me writing a message to somebody. I super scrolled, but we know where it's at, 221. I just said it out loud. Okay, that's me sending Mike's email out. David Mohan, when you mean by switches electing each other or by sending BPDUs, do you mean being the root? Yes, that's exactly what I mean. I wasn't using the correct technical term because I think there must be something more in the lemonade than I planned. Yes, root server, a root switch. Although, especially considering that ransomware doesn't guarantee you'll get your data back. Right, there can be bad guys out there who ransom you and say, okay, I got my money, I'm out. Oh, it comes to life. Passing 226. I'm about 12 minutes behind. That's okay. That's a good time to be. Patricia Grace, I'm connected now anyways. Entered the wrong security key. Good. It's still a good question. So it's worthy of research. You're connected now. I presume you mean to your WAP and not your neighbor's very powerful WAP, yes? Hello, what do you guys think of the name Reality Tech for my channel? As long as it's real. Much of my focus will be on reality checks regarding realistic budget solutions. I like the idea of check in there. It's got kind of a fiscal feel to it, right? Scott liked it. Reading questions, passing 233. Major attacks are almost all state-sponsored. I'm willing to bet there's certainly been a lot of discussion along those lines. I knew you meant state. Yeah, this is a good discussion. We ought to talk about this in Discord. Oh, good. I'm caught up here. I got 3 questions, and then I'll post the Discord information. Some computer just went, and I don't know if it was mine. I think my volume's down. Might have been my phone. Patricia Grace, bye, Mrs. Rush. Yeah, I don't know where she went. Bring my sugar bear on here. But he is, and he's not tech savvy. He's got to be. He's hanging out with you, and I'm sure you're teaching him everything. I'm not exactly savvy either. Bull, you knocked me out with some of your questions and some of the projects. And, oh, hey, look, if everybody didn't know this, Patricia Grace asked a question about a product that somebody brought up on Discord the other day, a product called Ventoy. And with Ventoy, Yeah, there's one. You can take a thumb drive, load images on it, more than one, and boot from any of those images on the thumb drive. And somebody had asked if I used it or Patricia used it or something, and I said no. And Patricia posted something to the effect that she hadn't used it, but she was looking for feedback from others. And so I put my hat on and said, Patricia, don't wait for somebody else. It's just a thumb drive. Try it. Take the lead, and you be the one providing that initial feedback. And she took me up on that challenge and is generating great results and great reports. So oodles of kudos to you, Patricia, for doing that. I like the check mark there. Just reach out to Scott and Dave. Thanks for letting me know. Good. Already reached out to Mike, but oh well. Okay, well, maybe he got you. I didn't know whenever anybody had found you. I hadn't seen or heard that you've been found yet. So I'm glad you got it all cooking. Okay. Ventoy, neat thing. I hadn't heard of it before. Now that I've seen, I think it was Silvius and Patricia, that's a weekend project for me. I'm going to take a whack at that thing. So I've got some really large thumb drives around here, and very excited to give it a stab. Ventoy was you, Zach. Yes, you started that conversation. Zach had mentioned on Discord, and you tried it, and it's marvelous. Excellent. All right, started looking at Ventoy last night after seeing it on Discord. Great, Jason. Chaco, Andrew Hutz. You for Raymond. Is there a layer 2 equivalent of traceroute? No, because there is no pathing at the MAC layer level. At MAC layer, how do we do that? You would have to tear apart, software-wise, not physically, every switch and read every MAC port table. But there's no software automated process to do that. In fact, all the switches if you nmap them, they just get conglomerated into one central connective hub. Even nmap can't see that. And now maybe some management switches have some capability of talking with each other and saying, hey, I'm hooked up to him and he's hooked up to me and so forth. But that would be proprietary protocol. There's nothing like a generic program to do such a thing. That's okay, Zach. Wish I'd seen your comment earlier. I would have told you. Awesome. David Mohan, when you're trying, this is the last one I'm going to do before I do the Discord presentation. That's not a presentation, but the info. So when you are trying to figure out an IP address range, it means the first and last IP address, right? And excludes the broadcast address and the network address. Yes, that's exactly correct. And I assume that you're asking that in the context of CIDR addressing, but it's just as true in classful addressing. So an address range, it depends on the context of what you're talking about here. An address range is, for instance, let's use the one at my house and probably at your house. I have an address range that covers 192.168.1.0 through 192.168.1.255. Now, I can't use the 0 address as a host address, and I can't use the 255 as an assigned host address. So if you're talking about the range of host addresses, you pull out the two, the network address label and the broadcast address. But if you're talking about the range in a generic context of this is all of the possible values of the address of the network address 192.168.1, then you would include the zeros and the broadcast. So it's all about the context of the question. And nobody's going to ask you anything without an appropriate context. When I say nobody, CompTIA is who I mean. All right, let's pause there for a second for station identification and talk about Discord. Let me bring up that page here so it'll be ready to share. Great. Oops, that's not it. There it is. So there exists out in the wild a Discord channel that was created by a gent named Jose Braden, one of the regulars on Mike's show and occasionally on my show, who took it upon his own shoulders to say, people have requested to talk about Mike's show or my show when it's not on. Things that might have been addressed in one of the presentations, and they want to talk about with each other. They want Mike to come on and talk about it. And Jose said, I'm doing it. I'm creating a Discord channel. And I'm thinking this was like 8 or 9 months ago, maybe. That's probably pretty close, right? Maybe not even that far back as I think about it. So its name is the unofficial Total Seminars Discord channel. Excuse me. And it's unofficial because we at Total Seminars have nothing to do with its existence or functionality. We don't own it. We don't operate it. We're not moderators on it. This is all Jose and the people that he selects as moderators. However, we are users of it. We are supporters of it, emotionally speaking, of course. And you'll find me parked there. It's running all the time on my computer if my computer's on. So I can see what's going on. And there are, I think, over 320 participants now, maybe more than that. And here's how you can find it. This is the link as of today. I'm going to post this in the YouTube chat. Well, wait a minute. Let me share this. And at the same time, I will post this on the YouTube chat. These change about every week. No, I don't want to do that. I want to just highlight this. So this is good for a week, but if you go there after a week, you're watching the archives 3 or 4 months from now, and you go to this link and it says, this isn't valid. There is an option on that same page that says, but go ahead and continue, and it will take you to the page and you can get your invite there and you'll be immediately accepted. I saw somebody new just pop on today. It's not that easy to find. I try and search it sometimes. It's easier now that Jose has bumped it. All right, posting this on, we left off at 242 on there. I'm posting the Discord link. I didn't have to do it there. I got a better way, and it's got more information. Stand by. There you are. Click over here. Click on this. Discord link. That's it. Okay, so I'm posting this at current time, which is 2:47. You just click on that handy dandy link and you come on over to Discord and join us. After the AMAs, Mike and or Scott and or I tend to join up with Mike's and, man, what's going on here? All kinds of goodies. Mics and cameras in tow, and we hope that you'll do the same, but you don't have to. You can come on anytime before, during, or after AMAs. People are always there. And this is just a batch of really smart people. Let me stop this share and get that fixed. It's doing wacky things. Okay, I'll share that one more time. There you go. And it's again, it's in the YouTube chat feed about a minute ago. So discord.gg. All this happy stuff that's case sensitive. And that fixes that problem. Okay, sorry about that. And come on over. So we had a ton of really smart people there. We got people there who are looking to learn. We've got sub forums, and I say we, it's Jose and his moderators do all this. Tulowitz here is one of the moderators. Zach is here. Patricia's here. Andrew's here. Jason's here. There's a bunch of folks here who are regulars on there, and we'd like you to become a regular too, or they would. Bring your input, bring your questions, and definitely come on and catch us live and on camera with your camera, and we'll see you face to face. We'd love to see what you look like and talk with you. I will be on Discord after the show today, about 20 minutes or so after the show's done. I got to get some things put together here for the evening, and then I'll be on for at least a half an hour or so. All right, back to questions. How are we doing here? Good, we got good shape. Reading questions. I have a question about Ventoy. I'll ask on, okay, Discord voice later. Sounds good. I'm looking forward to hearing your question because I know very little about it other than what I've said. And a number of you now have experience with Ventoy. So I would love to hear what you have to say before I get started on it this weekend. Well, that little thing is just kind of in the way, isn't it? But I want my mic a little bit closer to my head. Okay, this is for each other, but I want to see it. So at 2:45, U4 Raymond talks to Choco Taco. It would work in TCP/IP internet layer, right? So you could do that with routers, and that's the whole point of traceroute. But wondering if you can work on the MAC layer. Nope, because there's no routing at the MAC layer. I found it with Control F in chat. Okay. Yeah, that works too. Ciao a tutti. Alisa, Alix, Alice, there. Let's just do it right. Good to see you. And Andre's here. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. This is just like a second Discord meeting with a few other people on board. Dave, the link you posted here is different than the one you have on your document. They both work. I got one from the server invite tab and the other from the generated invitation link. Scott's barely here. As I said, if it doesn't work, it's okay. There's always a link on that page that says continue. You can put just about anything in there. Hello, Ed. I hear you. I'm just able to fully focus on drama because you're scanning. Scott Jr. barely. Hi there. Yeah, he's barely here. He's working his brains out and just barely paying attention to the AMA today because he's got this meeting and he's got to get something specific accomplished before the meeting. So he said, sink or swim, Rush, before we started this. Hey, Dave, says Nick. This came up on Wednesday. The pronunciation of your last name, please give it to us phonetically. But Nick, either Pothust or Potist. I just wanted to ask. I aced the technical part of my interview. Oh, yeah, I saw this on Discord. I wasn't sure what to say or act. So, all right, let's read the whole thing for everybody. This is at 2:51. Nick says, I aced the technical part of my interview, but was still rejected. I followed up, and they just said they found a stronger candidate. I'm new to IT. Okay, so that's a little different than what you posted on Discord, and it's much more meat that I have to work with. And the answer to that is yes, there are going to be good candidates, and as good as you are, I don't know how you presented yourself. I presume that you were normal and conversational and friendly and outgoing, and there was another candidate who was equally or better. Maybe he's a professional broadcaster in his past, and he can just hold that conversation and hold that attention. And there was just something different about his personality that was more in line with what they were looking for that particular position than what you brought to the table compared to what this guy brought to the table. Look, you made it to and through the technical part. You made it to and through the HR part of it, the let's find out about you. And there was, you can't nail them all, but you've got to look at this as a positive to say, this was practiced. He's not giving you the specific feedback that you want. What could I have done better? What would have made me the stronger candidate? But you made the effort to find out. And again, I wasn't there at the interview and I haven't spoken with you. Join us on Discord. I'll talk with you. I'll talk with you. Right, Mike. Mike is desperately interested in these kinds of things. And he will very likely get in direct voice-to-voice contact with you and listen to you and help you evaluate your communication skills, your presentation skills. And I'll be happy to do the same, but I'm not a career counselor. That's not my area of expertise, but I'll sure be happy to listen and watch out for things like and unnecessary pauses and answering questions that don't get asked and things like that. Don't give away too much. Don't hide too much. Just be yourself. Talk to somebody in an interview as if you were talking to a close family member. Be conversational. And I don't know that you didn't do those things. These are just general interview, human, interpersonal communication skills that we all need, both for the job and for the interview to get the job. They figure whatever you did and said and how you do these things in an interview, they will expect that you're going to do that on the job with coworkers, with customers, and things like that. So who knows? It might have been a nervous thing, could have been anything, could have been that the stronger candidate was stronger because he was the boss's child. I'm not accusing them of that, but there's a million reasons. But I don't necessarily think that it's some kind of a failure on your part. It's just competition. Keep sticking resumes out there. You're going to get it. You've already made it through this hump 2 times with this organization. You will again. And one of them's going to say yes. Does this happen often? I don't know. Again, I'm not a career counselor. I don't stay in touch with folks who do hiring, unfortunately. So, but yes, it happens often. For every time there is more than one candidate for a job, somebody is not going to get that job. So it happens all the time. Moving on, 252. Lots of people talking to each other. Andres, good afternoon to everybody. Tolaway to 253. AMAs, Mike does an AMA every Monday and Wednesday, right? Dave does Pi AMAs on Friday. Those are all true statements. Thank you, Tolaway. I'll probably film a channel trailer introduction soon, and we'll see what the first actual video comes out. Okay. And if I remember right, you said you had a guest already in mind for your first show, but I may have gotten that completely screwed up. When I worked the back channel on Mike and Scott's show, I work so hard and I read things so fast, and there's something I can research and have an answer ready for Mike if he doesn't have a handy one. And sometimes I'll confuse a few things. Okay. Perhaps I was a little stiff. Who knows? I'm glad you found it helpful. I hope that does help, but anything that we can do to help you get over that hump and break that nervousness, we'll be glad to do so. $255, David Mullen wants to know the difference between TDAM and CDMA. I can do, that's the cell phone CDMA, not Ethernet. Out of my area of expertise. I'll take that as a question to research for next week's show, or I'll give it to Mike. But and Scott probably has it off the top of his head. He's done that recently, working on Net Plus. Hey, there we go. Scott posts an answer. He's paying attention here. TDMA versus CDMA, both wireless, multiple access methods. Okay, time division and code division. Okay, so TDMA, time division, multiple access. Time division simply says when you have more than one device that needs to communicate across a channel, they will each be given a sliver of time relative to a total time slot. And so host A gets 1,000th of a second, and then host B gets the next 1,000th of a second, and so forth, for up to 1 second, up to 1,000 hosts, and then we start recycling that. And that'll vary, of course, in time and how many units are accessing it and what the total time slot is. And code division multiplexing, or multiple access, I wish that was a bigger picture. There it is. Each user signals continuous unique code pattern. Wow, buried within a shared signal. Mingle. Okay, got it. So in CDMA, you have a continuous stream of code, and each host that's going to participate in that communication code channel will get unique chunks of their own code that they can include onto the code carrier. I know this is getting esoteric. I'd have to do a whole 30-minute presentation to make all of this make sense. But the bottom line is it's possible in code division multiple access for multiple stations to communicate simultaneously with different code patterns, whereas in time division multiple access, everybody can only communicate individually during a little microscopic time slice. It should be enough, if that doesn't answer your question, to help make any research that you're going to do make a little bit more sense. And again, I am saving that question. I'll dig into it and see if I can find a lovely, succinct answer for you in the future. Okay, old unanswered questions. This is a new unanswered question, goes there, and there we go. All right, coming up on the hour here, I'm going to finish up a couple more questions here, and then we're going to move along, and then we'll come back and do more questions. 256, Patricia Grace talks to somebody else. Nick talks to Tullowit. Andre, toss a mistake and stay with us. I cooked the other night. I left the office as quick as I could get the project done. Raced home. We had some lamb chops that we picked up recently, and we're waiting for an occasion. And the occasion was the kid has gone off to do his internship job. It's an on-the-road job, walking pipelines and testing them. And so we thought we'd have a nice dinner before he went out and burned himself in the heat and humidity and swamps and snakes. So steaks my butt. We did lamb chops, and they were great. All right, I'm caught up on questions at 3:01. Let me head back over to notes here, some things I want to talk about, and then we'll do our little project for today. Tricks. Okay, no, so a little review, what we did last week, nothing. We basically took questions, and I did a short little presentation on screen capturing with the Scrot utility. And so I will post that part on the PyR Square server sometime this weekend. It'll be up next week. We'll have last week's show and this week's show ready to go. And depending on what I'm going to do, I may have that ready to go too. But Screenshot Scrot is a cool utility. It ships with Raspberry Pi OS. It's run from the command line. And it's a really great thing to do. Check it out. We started it on the hour in last week's show. If you haven't seen that yet, it's a wonderful way that's very powerful and very flexible to take screenshots. It's available as an installable app in many, many Linux distros. Nigel checked that out for us the other day. Where we're going today. So I don't have a big presentation today. I did what I did last week. I said, oh, good Lord. Now we're going to get argument on TDMA and CDMA on the back channel. I'll work it out with you next week. Because of this project at the office, I did what I did last week, which was I don't have time to put together a really nice presentation of some cool new technology, but I know and use Scrot regularly, so I can do one pretty much off the top of my head. Well, I did kind of the same thing today. There are a bunch of different camera types that are available to work on a Raspberry Pi, but one of them is one that we all have for the most part, and that's a USB camera. So what happens if we pop a USB camera, plug it into the USB port of a Raspberry Pi? How can I take advantage of that? And there's a number of things that you could do with it. You can live stream, you can take video, you can take screenshots. And so we're going to use a program called FS Webcam, all one word. And we're just going to look at the screenshot aspect of it today. It's cool, it's powerful, and I'm going to recommend this to you. If you're following along today, or you'd like to follow along with the lab today, oftentimes we can't do this because there are many time-consuming steps. This is an exception to that rule. If you will, right now on your Linux machine, install the FS Webcam program. All you have to do is sudo apt or apt-get if you prefer, install FS Webcam. It takes about 2 minutes or less, depending on your configuration and setup. You'll be ready to go and run all the FS Webcam stuff with me today. Sudo apt install FS Webcam. All right, so that's not going to take too long before we get to news, tricks, traps, and techniques of the week. Still waiting for my PoE Plus hat, and the rest of my Pico stuff isn't expected in until the end of the month. So, but I did decide I'm going to do a very simple show on Pico, on Raspberry Pi Pico, just to get you started. Let me pull one up here right now and show you what I've got in mind. If you buy a Raspberry Pi Pico, you got to program it, and it understands a couple of different programming language. That's not a fair thing to say. It can use, and you can teach it how to understand a couple of different programming languages. And those programming languages include C and C++ and Python. And we've talked about Python many times in here. It is the go-to if you're going to learn to program right now and you have no programming experience and you want to get work in the field. What programming language should I learn first? And the answer from most of the professionals out there is Python. There's plenty of other great languages and they have their place. So here's a Raspberry Pi Pico. Man, you got to love the size of that thing, huh? And what you have to do is two things to make it start working. And one of the cool things about here is there's no video output. There's nothing. You got to make it do stuff or connect it to things with pins and soldering on here and so forth. But there is a micro SD connector on here. And so you will need, to get yourself started, a USB to micro SD cable. And you plug the micro SD end in. There we go. And there's a little button on here, a little white button just under my finger. And you hold that down and you plug this into, it's easiest with a Raspberry Pi. You can do it with other things, but take some extra steps. So I hold that down and I plug this into the Raspberry Pi. And what that does is it engages this thing in gadget mode. It turns it into a storage device. And then there's two steps that you have to do. We're going to use the programming environment that Raspberry Pi intended to use on here, and that's the Thonny IDE. It's a Python, Thon, Raspberry Pi oriented, but Thonny's in other environments as well. I'm not going to take that up right now. Kind of, sort of. And what you have to do is you set the Thonny up to work in MicroPython. That is the native language that the Pico was designed to support. And then once that's set up in Thonny, you can export the MicroPython interpreter into here. It doesn't have an interpreter into it yet because you have to decide, do I want to put a C or C++ interpreter in there, or do I want to put a MicroPython interpreter in there? So we'll use Thonny and we'll export the MicroPython interpreter. And that's a one-time thing. Once it's done, it doesn't have to be done again. And then you can start running programs from the Thonny shell, or you can save any kind of program. And since this is a gadget device, a storage device, you just copy the program over onto the storage device here, and it has to have a specific name. It's got to be called main.py. And that's what this thing looks for and says, I'm going to run. And one of the really cool things about the Pico Pi is that it has two usable devices on it. So you can start experimenting right away. All you need is your $4 Pico and your $1 USB to micro USB cable and a Raspberry Pi or something that can run Thonny, and you're ready to go. What are the two things? Well, there's an LED. That's you can't do hello world on here because there is no video output. People are actually getting video output tools to work. That's kind of cool, but the closest thing that we can have in a native fashion for spending $5 is blinking LEDs. And there's really, really simple code. There's plenty of example code out there to write, and you can change frequency and flash rates and all kinds of goodies like that. And then there is a built-on temperature sensor in there, which we can access, and then we can use the LED to express the value in all kinds of terms. You can do it with counted flashes separated by a long pause or a long on light or whatever. It's some pretty neat stuff. All right, so we're going to do an episode on that when, I don't know, probably the next 6 weeks or so after the rest of my equipment comes in. All right, that was that, time permitting. Okay, so we're doing still today with FS Webcam. You can use FS Webcam to do motion capture, but it's not the best tool for that. There are better ones. So we'll work on that sometime in the future. And then we'll also use the native Raspberry Pi still and motion utilities with native Raspberry Pi cameras. And I'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. All right, that's news, tricks, and traps. Oh, except for this thing. Another flea market find. Wife and I were out walking this weekend at a flea market, and I found this blue box for, I don't know, $6 or $7 or something like that. These are Wi-Fi controllable outlets. It's kind of ubiquitous, but I get the price was right. They're like $2.50 a piece or less. What I liked about these ones compared to all the other ones, or many of the other ones that I've seen, is they are not forcibly tied to any of the major IoT platforms like Alexa or Siri or whatever. There is a Bluetooth app that talks with these straight from your phone or your tablet, and you don't have to get Alexa or any of that other stuff involved with it. At the same time, it does support interfacing with those. So if I want to turn something on, well, I don't have it. I'm the paranoid type. I don't have any of those IoT platforms, so I couldn't do it. But everybody else is into it. So you could interface something like this with whatever your device is and turn something on before you got home or while you're away. I'm visiting Brisbane today, and I think I'll turn the lights on back at the house. Lights? That was wrong. All right, cool toy. Now I've showed it on the show. Now I can use it. Old unanswered questions. Tullowit asked a question last week when we were talking about Scrot. He says, can you assign an F key to take a Scrot or print screen? In fact, you can assign any key you want, a key letter, a key combination, an F key. You use the command called keybind. And I've got a link here. Did I make this as a PDF? I don't think I did. No, I didn't. But I'm going to post a link at whatever time it is right now on how to use keybind to run any given program. Current time is 12 minutes after 3. It's over at arrow.com. Enter, and you can do that. Okay, this week's project, using FS webcam to capture still shots from a USB webcam. So there's all kinds of cameras available for Raspberry Pis. There are the ones that Raspberry Pi company themselves make. And in fact, I'm ordering the newest, latest, greatest one tonight. I've been waiting. It's been a long time since it's come out, but I finally looked at budget and said, I've got to play with this thing. So, but there was a version 1 that's long dead. There was a version 2. There was a pair of them, which is a regular, two of them. One of them is a regular daylight, plenty of ambient light camera. And the other they called Camera Noir, PiCam Noir, which means it works in the dark. And then the current version, those are both 5 megapixel. The current version is called the high quality Pi camera. It's a daylight camera, and it's 12 megapixel. Now the version 1s and version 2, 5 megapixel, daylight, nighttime, fixed distance and fixed focus lenses that aren't designed to be removed. Now they can be removed. You're going to need pliers, and you're going to have to break some glue, and good luck ever getting a replacement in there. The first one of those I really burgered up, but I learned some things as I went on and am able to pull them off now more readily. Why would I want to pull a lens off if I'm not going to put a new lens in? Because there are optical devices that you can use to focus an image straight on the sensor of a camera. Good Lord. Okay, we can talk about HMAC if that's, I don't know if that's back channel Scott talking to Michael or if that's coming up on here, but we'll get there. So I've used this, you've seen it before in one of our presentations where I set it up in a holder in a telescope. So the telescope gets its image and it sends it through the various mirrors and up through the eye tube, where normally there's a lens that's got a certain optical range, 6 millimeter lens, a 30 millimeter lens, whatever the case may be. But instead of an eyepiece, this thing goes where the lens would go. and we can focus directly on the sensor. And with that, I can take videos and stills and all kinds of good things like that. I have also done that. I've 3D printed a holder for a Raspberry Pi camera sensor, lens off, and that holder holds a Canon traditional camera lens, an EF or EFS lens. And again, it focuses straight on the sensor, and so I can use that as a camera and use it as a zoom lens or wide angle or whatever I want without trying to screw around with the tiny, tiny little lenses that are part of the regular Pi cam. Now, the cool thing about the newest, latest, greatest one isn't just the fact that it's got a lot more pixels, a 12 megapixel, but it doesn't come with a lens. It comes with a lens mount. It comes with a C mount and with a CS adapter mount. And there are plenty of very affordable lenses out there with C and CS mounts, and you can put those on and make zoom lenses, and they're compact and fixed lenses and all kinds of goodies. So when that comes in, we'll do some regular camera work on here and use my Raspberry Pi's utilities. But for today, we're sticking with USB cameras. Just wanted you to be exposed to those. So let me show you a couple tricks and traps on a Raspberry Pi computer here. Yeah, I can do this. Okay, let me share that. Okay, here's your basic Raspberry Pi computer. And I'm going to unplug my USB camera just so I can show you one thing. This is called how to test if your USB camera is being recognized by your Raspberry Pi, because there's some cheap ones and some old ones that don't get recognized in Linux. All you have to do is run the ls usb command and just notice what's there. So notice that we've got 4 lines here: device 1, 2, 3, and 4. Couple from standard, 3 from Standard Microsystems, and 1 from the Linux Foundation, the USB root hub. I'm going to leave that up, and I'm going to plug my camera back in. Give it a couple seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now run the exact same command and see if anything new pops up. If nothing new pops up, then your camera is not recognized by your Pi or by your distro of Linux. But hey, we got a device number 6 here. It's from Microdia. So something got recognized when I plugged it in. I have every reason to believe that it's a camera. The other thing that you can do is video cameras show up as a device in a dev folder. So I'm going to head over to CD to whack dev, and I'm going to do an ls on vid. And see this video 0? That wasn't there. Neither was 1 before I plugged the camera in. So USB video cameras tend to show up as video 0, video 1, video 2 if you have more than 1, and so forth. By default, video 10 through 16 are what show up. So the new stuff shows up on the bottom of the number counting. Cool. It's recognized. Head back over to the home folder. Clear the screen. So if you haven't done this already, the utility that we want to use is sudo apt install fs webcam. I'll hit the enter key. It's already installed on here. So it's just going to tell me you've already got the most current version. But if I didn't have it, or if I didn't have the most current version, it would have taken between 1 and 2 minutes to install. And now we're up and running. We'll come back to him in just a moment. All right, so there's the show US LSB Now, if we were using Raspberry Pi cameras, the programs to use are Raspi Still and Raspi Vid. If you try to run those with a USB camera, it'll say, I don't recognize this, you have no camera. That's because it's designed specifically to look in the Raspberry Pi camera ribbon connector port and to use the camera there. In order for that to work, you've got to plug in your camera into that port with power off on your Raspberry Pi. And then you power it on, you boot it up, and then you go into the Raspi configuration utility and you turn on, enable the camera port, and then you'll be able to use Raspi Still and Raspi Vid. Notice that I did not have to enable any kind of video or camera support here. You just plug it in and it works. So we use FS Webcam for stills. Again, it can be used for motion, but it's not very flexible. There's a better utility for motion, and amazingly, it's called Motion. Now, don't run this command right now that I'm about to tell you, and I'll explain why in a few seconds. If you want to do motion capture on your USB camera, you'll use a program called Motion, sudo apt install Motion. And it's a little bit of a hairy command. You've got to dig into the configuration files and do some poorly documented stuff in order to get it work. But once you get that stuff done and it's working, cool bananas. But here's the problem. Here's why you don't want to run this today. When Motion is installed, it takes the camera, says it's all mine, and it won't allow FS Webcam to use it. So when you run FS Webcam, you get error message and something about, it says it's busy. Well, yeah, it's busy because it's working for install Motion. And I learned that the hard way. I had it in a Pi that I had Motion running on. I installed FS Webcam, it choked and gagged, and I looked on the web real quick and found this incompatibility. So I uninstalled Motion and FS Webcam works on. So, all right, FS Webcam, it's generic. It's not just for Raspberry Pis. It works on x86 distros of Linux. It works on ARM distros. Very cool, very flexible. So let's start by using it. We'll do some very basic syntax. Now, got to warn you, this is a piece of junk camera that it's a miracle it even turns on. It works okay inside. It's really hot. It looks like I've got a million sunlights on me when I use it. If I do it in a dark room, I come up looking just like I do now, but my background is pure black no matter what it is. I've got this thing pointed out my bright window right now. It is unreadable. And it seems to be a temperature thing when it runs for a while, because when I first started testing this thing, the images were great. And then a few minutes later, they went into total blowout mode. So you're not going to see necessarily what I've got it pointed out front, but you don't have to. I'll be able to illustrate what I want you to see. So sorry about the fact there won't be pretty images, but it's pretty cool stuff. All right, so let me share this with you. All right, there we go. So I note what folder I'm in, and you may notice that I've got my file explorer out running right now too. I do that just because it's going to make this exercise a little bit easier. So the basic syntax is simply to say FS Webcam followed by an image name. Let's call ours image 01 and an extension for a graphics. And I'll show you the extension opportunities shortly, but we'll just make a basic JPEG right now. Enter, buzz, buzz, grind, grind. And he says, okay, give me a little bit of information about what happened. Dev video 0 was open. Okay, we saw that. No input was selected. There's only one camera here. Some cameras have multiple lenses and inputs, so we could select input 0 or input 1 or 2. And then this is a default resolution of the program itself. It makes a 384 by 288 image. Captured the frame, processed it, turned it into a JPEG, and there we go. So I can LS it here and show you. There it is, image01.jpg. And you can see that it's also popped up in here. So let's see what it's done. I double click that. And again, it just looks all faded out and you can't get much value from this image. But a couple things that we can see about this. Down here, it's got a banner. It's got some information about the image on the banner. It's got a line that divides the banner. And up here, we've got a title and information about the image. Let me close that and show you things that you can do with this. And I'm going to show you a neat site that you can go to and get a lot of information about this. So I'm going to say FS webcam space -- help. One of our favorite commands. Our favorite options or switches or flags, whatever you want to call them. And you can see each different kind of switch that we can throw in here in the general syntax. The general syntax is FS webcam, options from this list, the file name, and then if you want to do more than one picture with different options, file name, you can keep on doing that forever. So let's just pick one or two simple out of here, and then I'm going to show you a way to get some better information about this stuff. Quiet says, don't show me any output when I run this command. Verbose shows, show me lots of output. What are you doing? What are you opening? What are you saving? Loop is a really cool technique. Loop puts it in a continuous picture-taking mode. You get to define the number of seconds after that. So that's great if you're looking out front. Remember, this will keep doing this until you say stop. So if you start this now and walk away and come back a week later, if you were making them very frequently, and depending on the size of your storage device, you could be out of space. So plan ahead. And I'll show you some alternatives to that. You can tell it to run in the background so you don't see anything happening. You can generate log files and specify how and where the log files go. I don't care about any of this stuff. I want to do something cool and useful. All right, how about resolution? Let's do one that's a little bigger than 388 pixels wide, right? And this is really cool. I'm just going to overwrite that old image. So I'm going to say FS webcam -R, or you can say -- resolution, followed by a space, and then the resolution that you want. And let's just go whole hog on this thing. Oh, no, here, tell you what, let's do a smaller one. How about 800 by 600? And then the file name that I want to create, image01.jpg. Bam. So here's an interesting thing. Either the program or the camera is unable to support 800 by 600. And so the program said, I'm going to make an adjustment to something that is supported, 640 by 480. So anything that doesn't work, you'll find out either the whole program will fail, or if it's something that the program can adjust for, it does. So here's that saying, this old one is still highlighted, but there's a new one there. So I double click on it and it's a little bigger. What happens if I go as big as it gets? The camera, when I bought it, said HD on it. So how about 1920 by 1080? And even though it says HD on it, it's the old version of HD, 1280 by 720. So, okay, we'll look at it. It's still bigger, but it's the reason it was a $5 camera, right? Because it doesn't do much in the image here. It's too hot and doesn't support a full 1920. All right, let me show you a website. I'm going to put this in the chat feed, and I'll put a slide up. Okay, first in the chat feed, Control C, go to the chat page. See what I left off. I left off questions at 257. Somebody remember that for me. I'll highlight there. Okay, so time is 3:29 local. Just posted a link. Here it is on something fun to share. We're almost done. Don't worry about us running long. We're going to be fine today. Okay, so this is the link that I posted up on there, systutorials.com, docs Linux man. This is the man pages, version 1 for the FS webcam utility. If you do this on your computer, man space FS webcam, you'll get the same information at this screen. But I'm going to take you to that screen and we're going to talk about some options there. I'm going to show you one or two more, and there's enough there to get you going. Not there, over here, over here. Okay, now share. All right, so this is the page. It's the man page for FS webcam. And you get a little more information on what each of those parameters does. One of them, well, notice that all of these options and flags have either a shortcut, -Q, or a long version, -- quiet. So there's some value in knowing both of them or having access to both of them, and I'll show you in just a second. One of the things that we can do is take the options that we're going to use constantly and save them in a config file, and then just tell the command to refer to the config file instead of retyping -R space 1920 x180 -set space whatever set parameter we have. I was doing some experiments with this last night and this morning that had 7 or 8 different command switches on there, and says, I think I'll try this config thing, and that saves me a lot of trouble. I don't care about the offset, the background, the PID. I just want to get into the nitty gritty of how to take pictures on here. But you can see it's a very useful, very powerful command. This is a useful command I want you to see. List inputs. No, it's not. There's a different list that I want you to see. Hold off on that. The tuner is for tuning the images with colors and contrasts and things like that. And you can individually tune those things, but they have batches of preset profiles that you can tune your image to. Frequency is used when we're using the loop value for inputs and tuning. Okay, this is the one I want you to see. Palettes, -P. This is where you can select manually extensions or how you want it to read the sensor before it saves to a PNG file, to a JPEG file, whatever the case may be. So this is really useful for certain kinds of graphics program. I expect to get my graphics as a YUYV file. Okay, we can tell it to capture as YUYV. Here's our resolution. Here's our frames per second if we're capturing motion. And this is kind of cool. If you're capturing motion, you can say, capture this many frames. So we can define the frequency up above, take a shot every 5 seconds, do it at this many frames per second, and stop after 2048 frames. The delay from the time you run the command to the time that it starts taking pictures. And the set list of controls. That's one I want you to see. Oh, I'll take that everything. If you do -- no banner, I'm going to demo him first. That makes the banner at the bottom of the page go away. And you can do all kinds of controls to the banners in there. So the way this is done, let's just do it. Close that. Head over here. Share this. All right, so let's look at the last image that we took. There it is in all of its glory with a very compressed banner down here. Can't see all the information in it, but that's all right. It's there. So let's run this same command again. And prior to image, we're going to say dash dash no banner. Let me confirm I got the syntax right on that. Yeah, no dash banner. Okay. Enter. Buzz, buzz, grind, grind. No error messages other than a change in resolution. So now when I go look at that same image, the banner is gone. The red line is gone. The gray line is gone. The contents. And there's all kinds of other controls related to what you want to add to the image, timestamps and things like that, or what you want to take away like that. Now I want to do this one. FS, oops, in here. FS webcam minus list controls. So here's the controls that we can add to the command line if we like. And let me show you how it works. I'm going to run this same command and we'll add a control to it. Now I'm going to say -S for set, and then I have to pick something from this list. Let's pick hue. It's not case sensitive. No space after it, an equal sign, no space after the equals. And I can either use a percentage or a number. I can say 60% or 100% or 49% or whatever. Or I can use any number from within this range. It's presently set to 0, which is in the middle of the range. So I'm going to make it hue is 100. If I don't do a percent sign, then he knows I'm using numbers from here. Enter on it, generates the image. And he's changed the hue from this bluish green to a much more blue teal color. If I do a lower number, it'll head toward reds and purples and things like that. Now, what if I have a whole bunch of commands or settings like that that I want to do? I can put them in a configuration file. I've already created one. Keep doing that. Okay, over here. Nano. And I just invented a file name. Could be anything you want here. I called it webcam.conf. And what we've done here is instead of saying -S space brightness or --set space brightness, when you use a config file, you can simply use the word set and then the parameter that you want to set. Pound signs at the beginning of a line mark the line out. They're remark lines or comment lines. So I could have done this by saying -S space brightness equals 20, space -S space saturation equals 25, all that on a single command line. But by saving it in here, I can simply run this and say refer to that file. So let's get out of here. And this time we're going to say FS webcam. Oh, heck, let's get rid of that JPEG. RM image 01.jpg. And this time we're going to make it as a PNG file. So we're going to say FS webcam -C, refer to a configuration file, followed by the name of the file, webcam.conf, and we'll call it image 1 again. But this time it'll be a PNG file. So here's all the things that it saw in there. There's a brightness, there was a contrast, there was a saturation, there was a hue. I didn't specify a resolution in there, so it used the default. Let's fix that. I want a bigger resolution. There we go. Okay, so it's a little bigger now. 1920 by 1080 was switched to 1280. So here it is over here. Let's see what we got out of it. You can see some trees over here a little bit. There's some bushes over here, some bushes over there. It's not real great, but with enough tweaking, I could probably get a decent image out of that. All right, FS webcam. That's generally what I wanted to show you. Let me tell you a couple more things for just a minute or two, and then we're done with this presentation, and we'll talk for the rest of the show. Go over here, and over here. Now I can see you again. I'll do a refresh on this page for my own purposes. 257 is where I left off. So the only thing I want to add to this, other than do your own research because there's more and there's cooler and there's better, is there are a couple ways to do time lapse. If you use the motion capture, it's not time. I guess you can kind of make it like time lapse because it'll take pictures every few. But the better way to do it is with the -L or minus loop. And that's one way to kind of automate and do time lapse. Here's the problem with it. It starts doing time lapse captures until somebody comes and interrupts the process. So if I want to only run it for a certain amount of time because I'm concerned about space or because the lights are going to go out at some point and there's just going to be wasted dark pictures, then there's a couple other things that you can do to automate the process. One of them is you can semi-automate it with a bash script. So you got kind of a problem here. We're going to make a loop in the bash script. And again, it's going to run until somebody stops it. But here's the cool thing about the bash script. In bash, we got variables. And you can use variables like time and date to take a picture and timestamp the file name based on time and date. So it takes a picture, gets a different file name every time. So that's kind of neat. Another way to do this is to completely automate the process, create that same script, and then call for it as a cron job. A cron job is a task scheduler in Linux. We haven't done cron yet as part of this series, and I have every intention of doing that. It's a cool thing. So you can say, run that bash script from noon until 6 p.m., and it'll take however frequently you said to do that, or you can tell the cron job to run that bash script one time every 5 seconds, every 60 seconds, whatever you like, and generate however many pictures that'll do. So there's ways to automate it. Now, what do I do with those pictures? Well, you could process them or review them directly on the Raspberry Pi, but the usual thing is I'm getting pictures from this source and from that source and from that source, and I would like them all to go to a single repository for review, inclusion, and documentation, whatever the case may be. So that we're not going to do in this class, but we could use any number of programs. Got to do a little bit of pre-work on all of these to make them do their magic, but you could use the SCP program, run that as a cron job. Every day, SCP, all of the .png files in this folder, you can specify a different folder, and SCP them to that host. You could use the rsync program. An rsync program says, I have 2 locations whose contents are supposed to be identical. This one should never be manually deleted or automatically deleted, but if there's ever any changes in that one, bring them over. We could use TFTP, Trivial File Transfer Protocol, run that as a cron job. It doesn't need login names or passwords like rsync and SCP. You could build a Samba server somewhere and then just preset up the credentials and connections on this machine. Again, cron job, copy them all over to the Samba server. There is also that discussion that you have to have with yourself after in the script that I'm writing to run and copy these things. Should I include in that script, delete all the originals? And I would argue no, maybe delete everything that's X days or X weeks old, but what if the copy didn't work right? Now you delete everything that was supposed to have been copied today and you're kind of scrooched. So that is FS webcam, works on all modern webcams. Get a decent webcam that actually shows an image that's not totally blown out like the one I'm using right now in front of my face. But I thought if I unhooked that and showed you outside with it, we couldn't talk very well. All right, let's go back and see what's on messages that have popped up. Doesn't look like too many new ones. Hey, by the way, you know my drill. Do me a favor, like it, please. Help other people find these things. I have how many? 100 indexes written up that are ready to go up, and that will help people along with this. They are waiting for a blessing from somewhere down the line from people who are very busy. But if and when you get ready to look for that stuff, I'm going to talk to the powers that be and say, look, let somebody check these things and give their blessing after the fact. They're just pile up and people can't take advantage of them. So if I've got a typo here or there, it's not going to be many of them. And I'm fairly good at this stuff. Let's get them up. So we'll see if we can get those indices all ready to go for you. All right. Reading questions, passing 2:57, 3 o'clock, intercommunication with each other. Jason Helms. Oh boy, I still have my Pico in the package. Yeah, I love Picos just for the little bit that I played with them. Jason, send me a message on Discord. Ask me about the tutorial that I used, and I will shoot that to you. And that is an LED blinker that has all the information about how to get the interpreter from Thani on and get it talking to each other. And the tutorial bites. There was steps that have changed since that tutorial was written, and I had to figure it out, and I'll share those with you. Yeah, it looked like the size of a sodium. Yeah, it's even smaller than a sodium. They're very tiny. Okay, that was a note I post. Can you explain HMAC, Alice? Yeah, let me see what Scott posted here, and then I'll give you my thing on it. HMAC is simpler and harder than it seems. Okay, thanks, Scott. HMAC is a hash-based algorithm that's used in part to do authentication and in part to do a part of the public key exchange. So it's going to start, this is one of those rare ones where we're going to use the public key. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a message that's completely accessible to both stations involved in what's going to be an encrypted conversation, an unsecure website, a clear message that the host is going to, that the server is going to send to the workstation, whatever. It's got to be a message that's available in the clear to both sides that are going to involve. Then, and I'm going to make this very short, I can give you a long version and I can give you some slides and things like that I've created because this question comes up a lot in Udemy for me. The sending computer, the one that's got the private and public key both, is going to hash that up with its private key, and it's going to hash its own private key, and there's going to be two other twists that get added to the whole thing, and in the end, one glob of junk is going to get sent over, and then the host, the receiving host, the client, is going to reverse engineer all that with the public key. It's going to receive the public key along the way, and you can use the public key to decrypt a private key, right? So he's going to, first of all, unhash what he's got, and then out of that, pieces will come out of the hash or be determinable from the hash, and then we're going to reverse engineer the clear text message that came from the server and compare that up with the clear text message that we're going to hash on the client side. And if the hashes match up, I know this is a little convoluted. I'm not doing a great job of explaining it because it is complicated, but the long and short of it, they're both going to generate using different tools, a hash, and then we're going to compare it on the client side. And if it's good, also included in that junk will be a key transfer. So I'll give it to you a little better and a good website that you can review that on Discord. If we just go by some website's definition, HMAC is also called a keyed hash message authentication or hash-based message authentication. It's a message authenticator. I have a message. You have a message. I'm going to do this to it and generate a hash. You're going to do that to it and generate a hash. And then I'm going to send you mine, and you're going to compare hashes with what you've come up and with what I've come up with. And you got to do a couple steps to undo mine to get to my hash first. And so when you do all those steps, you come up with matching hashes, then you have authenticated the message. That's the whole point of it. HMAC is all about authentication. Andrew says, website, AliExpress, that must be a response to somebody else. Okay, hope that helps. And that's it. We only got 10 minutes to show left in the show. If you've got, give me some thumbs up, people. If you've got any questions, now the time. We finished up 10 minutes early. We could do that again today. And if not, I got nothing else new to add. There was some interesting Linux-oriented news. Yes, HMAC is a real pain. So you're studying Sec Plus. Here's the good news about HMAC. You don't have to know step-by-step how it works. Sec Plus is not about the steps involved in encryption and decryption. That's for CYSA Plus and CISP and things like that. You have to know what HMAC is, that it's a hash-based message authenticating system. And the one critical thing is knowing that this is one of the rare occasions where the server will use its private key to perform an encryption that's going to get decrypted by the public key on the client side. So Mike, in his Udemy videos and in his book, gives a lot more information about it than you need to know for the exam. There are so many different things in there. You don't need the nitty gritty. We kind of mentioned this in the past in conversations that you and I have had about some of the common encryption protocols. You need to know if they are streaming, if they're block, and which ones use longer keys. Sometimes, I don't know if you need to memorize how many bits in a key. Almost certainly you do, but you have to know for certain which is bigger than the other. So obviously you're going to have to, it helps to know the numbers, right? This is a 56-bit key. This is a 128-bit key. This is a 64-bit key. And I have encountered questions where the question is exactly that. Which has the bigger key, triple des or blowfish? Good lemonade. Yeah, don't panic. That stuff is not nearly, as I said, in depth in Sec Plus as it is in crypto classes. All right, what did I want to do? I want to go look at this real quick, see if there was anything stunningly interesting in here. There's been a lot of Linux news going on Linux Today and 9 to 5 Linux. There was nothing so good that I said, you know, I'm going to put that in my list of things that we're going to talk about. We've done that. I don't work with DNF packages. Everybody here is using, for the most part, Debian distros, so we don't need DNFs. Those are in Arch. Just reading some notes here. There was an interesting one that I ran across here. We're going to do in our future Kubernetes, containers under Linux, the next most popular containers after Docker. And like Docker, people have looked at Kubernetes and it's growing up big and fast and taking more and more market share as we go. And you can manage Kubernetes, some people call them Kubernetes, I used to, containers individually and manually, but people have created great tools that allow us to graphically manage Kubernetes containers singly in multitude And there's some good utilities out there. And after we do Kubernetes containers, it is my intention to pick one or two of the really good ones that manage those and come on in and do a little experimenting with that. We've done Docker containers. That worked out really well. Oh, so I found a really good utility in here on two things. One, we've done clusters. And we did a Maria database, an SQL database, a long time ago when we first talked about LAMP servers, right? Linux, Apache, and Maria SQL databases. They're a little complicated. There's a learning curve to working with a SQL database, even just populating it. But now they've been around for a while. There are great tools on using and managing SQL databases like Maria. And that's what I'm going to do. All right. We've got 5 minutes left. I'm not going to read any more of this junk. Good stuff out there, though. Click that. Click that. Click this. Yes, HMAC is a pain. All right. No new questions coming up. So let's wind this thing up then. 4 minutes early, 3 minutes early, it'll come out. COVID's still here, folks. It's dropping in some places. It's getting bigger in other places. Do what you can do to stay safe. You know the drill. I'm not going to offer advice on it, but what I am going to do is that, man, messages coming up all over the place. Oh, next week, don't know what I'm going to do. Probably another one of these. I still got this project on my plate. It's going to be on my plate until the end of the month. There's less things that I have to do than I've had to do in the past, but I got to be down at the office for a lot of it, and that kind of reduces my ability to do research for shows and to conduct shows. So things we got up and coming down the road. We mentioned these last week: Kubernetes, installing certificates in Apache servers, different ways of blinking LEDs to get information, how to make your own certificate authority. That one really appeals to me. And Pixie booting with the Raspberry Pi. That totally appeals to me, though I envision that thing is going to run a couple of episodes. There's a few things that you have to do. You got to set up a server with your bootable images. That's a dedicated box and dedicated shareable storage. Then you got to configure the Pis and a few episodes there. Mike's doing his regular show on Monday so far. Didn't hear any special topics. You never know. Okay, Scott just posted a link to the Discord channel. I will be there 20 minutes after our show. He may be there, and Mike may be there after they finish their publishers meeting. Scott posted that at 3:57. Thank you, Scott. Nice job. I am Dave Rush, Senior Instructor at Total Seminars. You can reach me at my office address at davr@totalsem.com. You can get Scott at scottj@totalsem.com. So this has been Dave Rush, Senior Instructor at Total Seminar and Resident Pi Specialist, wishing you a great weekend. Take care of each other. Take serious steps to stay healthy. Call or visit your parents if that's possible for you, and your sibs. And never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resource we have are you and I. And so with that, I will bid you good night.